Michigan lost 38-17 to Oregon, the number one team in the country this last week, in a game in which the Wolverines actually were surprisingly competitive and within striking distance of actually making it a real contested matchup late in the game, and yet everyone's kind of freaking out in the aftermath. I have different opinions about that, but let's talk about that, a little bit about the recruiting piece, and more on this episode of Locked On Wolverines.
You are Locked On Wolverines, your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverines, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Monday. We're back and doing it. Locked On Wolverines podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. I'm your man on the ground, Isaiah Hole, publisher of Wolverines Wire through USA Today Sports Media Group. I was on the ground on Saturday, was not today, to continue to recover from what I believe is pneumonia, based off of what other people around me have that have had the same symptoms for a month, but have a voice. So we are going to get into it. Michigan, like I said, loses 38-17 to Oregon. Really, that last 7 points came with 30 seconds left to go in the game. Game was essentially over. He could have taken a knee and not scored the touchdown. Michigan could have stopped the touchdown from happening. So that's kind of how you look at some of these things. But nonetheless, the Wolverines kind of surprised me in a lot of ways. It was a much more competitive game than, especially compared to, like I gave you the track to how over the course of last week. How can you win? Well, I didn't anticipate until Friday night. I was out at dinner at the Chop House with Canada Mike, Chris Ballas, and some others, and we got word while there that Michigan was going to be without not only Will Johnson, but Jair Hill. And at that point, I was like resigned to the fate of what Michigan was going to be looking like against the number one Oregon team, a team that is insanely good at passing the football. And obviously, they had a lot of luck passing the football. But even though you look at Dylan Gabriel's 297 yards, about 70 of those came on the final drive in which they scored a touchdown with basically time expiring. So in terms, so it was really kind of a garbage time touchdown at that point because Michigan failed to do anything to kind of get back into the game there at the end. But nonetheless, it was a valiant effort put forth, because if you would have told me to do another show, another preview at 8 o'clock when I learned this news about the cornerbacks being out, I would have said, give me Oregon 52 to Michigan 10. And yet Michigan put up 17 points. Really good performance by Davis Warren. Really kind of, honestly, a little surprised. Like he threw the ball away sometimes instead of trying to make a play. There were a couple times where he could have made a play still and didn't. Obviously, everyone's heaping hate on the coaching staff. I think that that's mostly well-deserved. Not fully, but mostly. Offensively, yeah. I actually defended the fourth down play call in real time when it happened. But the more I thought about it in the aftermath, I'm like, no, that's a terrible decision. I've long kind of told you all season long, Kirk Campbell, there have been times where he has called really wonderful games in some of these losses. The problem is the lack of execution from the players. I can see what he's doing, and they just can't do it. Like I said this again during the game to Bryce Marich. It feels like in order to get 5 yards, a lot of times Michigan has to pull out the most creative things you have ever seen. And that's a problem, right? Nothing looks easy for this team from an offensive standpoint. And if you're an offensive coordinator, you should be able to have some bread and butter plays you can go to that you just can say, like, hey, in the case that we really need 5 yards, we feel really confident that we can go to this well often. And they don't have that whatsoever. But yeah, to me, I look at it and it does feel to me like Kirk Campbell is probably a dead man walking. You cannot fail at the level he's failing currently. And you can say sometimes the players aren't executing. Like, execution didn't really feel like a problem on Saturday against Oregon. It felt more like a play calling run amok. And I felt like Davis Warren, Colston Loveland, some of those guys did the most with their opportunities. I mean, we saw 2 passing touchdowns of the likes we haven't seen all year of threading the needle, putting it right where it needed to be. And actually should have been a third because the Tyler Morris, the second one that should have been his second touchdown, hit him in both hands right where only he could go get it. And it went through his hands. right? Like if you are a receiver at this level, that's the type of play that you need to be making. Okay. So kudos to Davis Warren for the job he did. Offensive line is continuing to be hit or miss. I echo what some people said about Giovanni El-Hadi having his worst game. Going back and watching some of the tape, it was not a good performance by him. But overall, I thought the pass protection was mostly very good. And I think that's a step in the right direction. Run game, weirdly, continues to be a problem lately. And to me, that's partially the identity issue. You can't really look at this Michigan offense and say, this is what they do well. I think that's why I made the case for Orji all along, in large part because I understand you want to be able to do the types of things Davis Warren can do, which Alex Orji cannot. But at the same time, you need to hamstring this coaching staff to some degree to be like, this is how we need to call games. But then I say that in the same breath, they went to Washington and in the first quarter decided that they were going to be a pass first offense, despite that not being something that Alex Orji is comfortable with. And they continue to do that. They get the ball at midfield with an opportunity to really make the game really close at halftime and give yourself a shot in the second half. And they do 3 passing plays for 5 yards. It's unacceptable. Like, I understand you want to try to catch defenses off guard, but at some point you just have to be good enough at something. This is what we're used to seeing in the last couple of years. Michigan being good enough at running the football and they were so had so much precision. They had so much discipline that you just knew that okay, the front's going to do its job. It knew what to do. It could do it, which is kind of what we don't see on a down by down basis here. And yet teams couldn't stop it. On a 3rd and 6, you knew that Blake Corum was probably going to get the ball and he probably was going to convert and you felt fine about it. But right now, that's not where they're at. It seems a lot of times they're running when they should be passing and passing when they should be running. And to me, that's an offensive coordinator who's in over his depth and overthinking the entire scenario. Okay. Discipline really got Michigan in trouble this game. Obviously, not being able to get off the field cost them 3 points. Just the timing of the 5 penalties that they had were untimely. They were just absolutely horrendous timing, every single one of them. And that's where okay, if they don't have any penalties, maybe that game goes a little bit different. Okay. The reason why I can understand a lot of you are upset is because you had hope, maybe for the first time all year, that they could go and beat a really, really good team. I mean, USC felt like it was that at that moment. And obviously, getting out to a large lead and then letting them come back didn't help the matters of that. A lot of people still walked away from that game with a sour taste in their mouth. But when it came to this Oregon team, it felt like, okay, this is the best team you might see all year, right? This is the team that I had predicted is going to win the national championship. So to me, for them to win by 3 scores isn't exactly surprising given what this Michigan team is. I've come to terms with what this Michigan team is. And yet, a lot of people are really upset. So let's continue talking about the trajectory of this team, and then we'll hit on what ended up being a pretty big recruiting weekend. We're going to do that here in just a moment. But before we do, our friends over at 5 Hour Energy know that being a passionate football fan is not just a hobby, it's a way of life. It takes a lot of energy to power through all-day tailgates, touchdown celebrations, or an agonizing second overtime, which is why they've created the Stand the Fan 5 Hour Energy Shot with a special flavor called Fan Fuel, the energy shot made just for super fans like us, the fans who are first in the parking lot and the last to leave. We see you. And it's just like, when the one thing that gave me fan fuel was just seeing these Michigan players just never quitting. Seeing Davis Warren thread the needle 2 times. I mean, what an incredible performance by a guy that we had all written off pretty much. Even those who were clamoring to see him again, pretty much written him off. So that is what you need to go forward, is performances like what he had in these final 3 games. 5 Hour Energy knows that no matter what team you root for, being a fan requires heart, soul, and a whole lot of energy. Whether you're prepping for the big tailgate or ironing your jersey, your game day to-do list is always a mile long. That's why the limited edition Stand the Fan 5 Hour Energy Shot is here to help keep you fueled throughout the seasons. So what's your fan fuel this week? Whatever it is, do it with a 5 Hour Energy. Available at 5hourenergy.com, shipped nationwide. All right, we're going to continue on here in just a moment. Before we do, Any of you who are watching on YouTube have noticed, I'm sure, the big block M behind me with this beautiful LED display. And what that is a team ticker. Team Ticker is a one-of-a-kind sports sign for college sports fans. Team Ticker is a 1.5 by 2 foot wall sign featuring a Block M logo that has a cool retro-looking LED display. The display is updated daily with fresh content such as countdown to the next game, schedules, standings, stats, and news. It's super fun and a great way to stay connected with your Michigan Wolverines fandom. It's a combination of design and function that gives you an entertaining, creative way to display your team pride while providing a unique connection to your favorite team, whether it's football, men's and women's basketball, baseball, soccer, or softball. Team Ticker has you covered. Never miss a game, as the high-tech retro display provides a countdown to the next big game, as well as daily updates of the latest team news, stats, schedules, standings, and much more. Use the content control section of the mobile app, will allow you to control the sports you see, and the remote control function lets you jump directly to any section of the content. Each sign is officially licensed, meeting high-quality standards, and is assembled by hand in the U.S. Team Ticker is the ultimate addition to your Michigan Wolverines sports collection. Once you hang it on your wall, it's going to be the talk of all of your fellow Michigan fans. If you're looking for that one eye-catching item to showcase your team pride or a gift for that special Wolverines fan, go to teamticker.com. Pick up your Team Ticker today. Team Ticker, as I said, is a one-of-a-kind sports sign. Go to teamticker.com, use the promo code LOCKEDON, and you'll get $50 off of your Team Ticker purchase. All right, so I'm excited, actually. I've been on record for a couple of years that I'm not, especially in the waning years of the Juwan Howard era, didn't love going to basketball games. Going to very quickly run into Sarah's and then to Ann Arbor today to go watch Michigan basketball commence the Dusty May era, and I'm very actually excited to see what that looks like. So hopefully we'll have something to, aside from the Detroit Lions, if you're a Lions fan, something to keep you excited. Obviously, football recruiting is something that can. We'll touch on football recruiting in segment 3. But where does Michigan go from here is kind of what I want to cover now. And I still don't, I still think that they need to lean on the identity that they more so figured out against MSU. And with the caveat that if a guy is dealing like Davis Warren seemed to be dealing against Oregon, you change the script. You go with the hot hand. You stay with the hot hand, right? To me, that's what you do. Now, they did an okay job with that with some respects, right? You saw Donovan Edwards. We got the box score up here. We haven't even touched on that. Donovan Edwards was the better of the two backs overall. 10 carries for 52 yards compared to Kalel Mullings' 8 carries for 16 yards. Donovan was running hard, man. He's been running hard for like the last like 4 games, but no one's really noticing. Problem is he's not getting as many opportunities, and I know they were down, but 28 carries for 105 yards, not great. Certain things I don't like seeing, like Colston Loveland on an end around. I mean, if you're gonna do an end around, do it with Tyler Morris, someone with a lot more speed than Colston Loveland. I understand you're trying to keep people off guard. It's just, to me, that's just a dumb decision. And I know they ran it, I think, against MSU or 2 weeks before, and it worked. But I mean, to me, just don't do it. I didn't like it then, even though it worked, and I didn't like it now. Nonetheless, just the fact of the matter is, you saw a lot more things kind of working for Davis Warren. 12 for 21, 164 yards, 2 touchdowns, QBR of 89.2. Not that far behind Dylan Gabriel, who had 13 more attempts. But still, I mean, I think that there's a lot to like about what you saw offensively. Defensively, here's what I think Michigan is. I know there's a lot of people calling for Wink. Certain things aren't working. To me, Wink is also overthinking it, or maybe underthinking it is the better way to put it. So I think that there is some degree with Wink where he is still stodgy, right? Like, where he's doing things that worked in the NFL and that don't necessarily work in college, okay? And I think that I think he has given you a C plus B minus performance as a defensive coordinator. I can't hate on him to the degree that some people are. I think because some people are looking at it through the lens of, and I understand why, Jesse Minter and Mike McDonald. I thought this was going to look a little bit more Mike McDonald than Jesse Minter, and it hasn't been that. But in total defense, it's not like some great number, and giving up about 500 yards to Oregon isn't going to help that, but that's just kind of what Oregon does. But Michigan is not like this team that is failing defensively. Okay, they're 47th in the country. We expect that to be much higher than it is in terms of total defense. In terms of yards per play, it is, I think it's a little bit less. I'm going to have to search for it in order to find it here. 43rd. It's actually a little bit better. And as far as scoring defense, Michigan is 56th. So upper third just into upper quad defense overall. Passing defense has mostly gotten better this last week. I mean, they did the best they could given the circumstances. The rushing defense has been a little bit alarming the last few weeks. So, I mean, this just, and looking at the passing defense, it's 95th right now in the country. So that hasn't been good, but the last couple weeks outside of last week have actually been pretty decent, keeping teams well away from doing what they want to do as far as that's concerned. 23rd in rush defense. But nonetheless, I think that what Michigan needs to do is obviously it needs to look at revamping the offensive side of the ball. And if you're only going to be able to get a Bryce Underwood or a top tier quarterback in the transfer portal, if you do that, no offense to Kirk Campbell, this isn't working, man. And I don't think that at a place like Michigan, you have time to work out these kinks when you don't have a track record. Wink at least has a track record, and I'm not saying that he should stay. I'm not saying he should go. I just don't think it's as bad on that side of the ball as people are saying. Now, that said, it needs some work. I feel like, their angles to the football, tackling, these are the things that are the elementary things that they are just not getting. And I feel like it's a marriage to scheme and not technique and fundamentals, and that's a massive problem in the college level. And it makes sense that an NFL defensive coordinator would kind of have that mentality. So, if we're not just making change for the sake of change, you got to be able to get someone that's going to do better, and maybe get some other coaches that are going to teach it better at the minutia. I don't think anyone should be safe except for Sharon, and I know there's people that want to see Sharon go. Listen, that's the quick way to become Florida. And I understand it's not good this year, but his recruiting has been phenomenal thus far. The only other coach that I'm looking at for sure and saying, like, you get a pass. I'll give you two. I think Steve Kasula gets a pass as long as you keep Andrew Olesh in the class, because he's done a good job. Colston Loveland has increased his level of play, and out of necessity, and the talent was there, but he's done a good job at least maintaining that talent. And Lamar Morgan, who doesn't necessarily have the best on-field product, but has been an absolute dynamo when it comes to recruiting. I mean, you might be looking at 6 defensive backs in this class, and all of them being like super high caliber guys, really reloading that room potentially if you can hold on to everyone and get the guys that you hope to add to that. But other than that, there's, linebackers a problem area. Defensive line's been great, actually. So Lou Esposito, I'll give you a pass as well. The defensive line's it's actually the best pass rush in the country. So I can't really argue that Lou Esposito's done a bad job. But obviously the back end needs some work. And you need to figure out some different things. Maybe you change some guys' roles that are still there if you think like they're plus recruiters or something. I'm not sure. But they need to figure that piece out. And obviously they need to finish strong recruiting and then dip hard into the transfer portal. Let's talk a little recruiting. Yes, I'll touch briefly. I don't have really much of an update on Bryce Underwood. Waiting on one. I know that there was an interesting development that happened yesterday, Sunday. I can't tell you what it is because I don't know. I know a little snippet of it. I'm not going to share that, but we'll talk a little bit about the recruiting piece here in just a moment. But before we do, get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, which is America's #1 sports book, because right now new customers can bet $5 to get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, quick PSA with the recruiting piece here. It's funny. I say like the recruiting piece. You know, I you know where I got that. See, I don't know if you know this. I am very heavily on the autism spectrum, and I can be a mimic, and I don't do this purposefully, but I understand whenever I say that. That's stealing the style of speech from Don Brown of all people. But anyway, so a huge recruiting weekend. But here's the PSA for you. I still saw people like in the comments of some of the things I posted recruiting wise, being like, why would they even want to come here? And blah blah blah. I understand you're angry with the product on the field. Number one, those two things don't necessarily correlate. Okay, that's number one. Number two, keep it to yourself because recruits see those things and they make a difference. I have spoken about this on the podcast, not for a long time because it's been a while since Michigan struggled, but I've had high level recruits. I've had 4 and 5 star recruits tell me, I see how fans react when they have a bad game and I don't like it and I don't want to go there. And I understand that's every fan base, but the Michigan fan base is much bigger than most fan bases, and y'all get way more in your feels about Michigan than you do a lot of other things. So I would recommend that either take it to a private message board or keep it to yourself. Do not put it on. This is why I don't tag recruits in it, and I just send them their own pictures and stuff like that, independent, because you're just going to see a lot of negativity. But I've had multiple recruits. Some have ended up at Michigan. Some have not. I know one high level 4-star who ended up at Penn State instead of Michigan. And he told me the reason why he wasn't going to go to Michigan is he just did not like the way the fans acted when the team struggled. Didn't feel like they had the back of the players and everything. I've had not current players, but players that while they were players tell me the same thing from time to time back more in the 2017, 2018, 2019 era where they were like I'm getting so sick of this. So just keep in mind, these are human beings. And I understand there's a lot of people that say, well, I'm going to say what I want to say. Okay, well, you're not pushing things in the right direction. Okay, you do have a part in all of this. So that's the PSA that I haven't said since like 2019 or 2020. That is absolutely worth saying. That said, I mean, that it was massive that they got Derek Meadows on the field. So I was not feeling well at all on Saturday to the point where I considered not going to the game. But I was excited, not because of the game, but because I wanted to see who all was there. Obviously, I wanted to see if Bryce Underwood ended up going, and he did not. For anyone who said, oh, he was there, I am I'll say 98% sure he was not there. The person that a lot of you thought was Bryce Underwood in the pictures that were circulating was Jamar Browder, the 3-star wide receiver who's currently committed to NC State. But no, as far as I have been told, Bryce was not in the stadium anywhere. Okay. And I've gotten mixed messages on whether his parents were there or not. Will Ferrell was there, so that's cool. But the fact that they were able to get Derek Meadows, I mean, there wasn't really much of rumbling that Derek was looking around outside of his LSU commitment to get him there. And I mean, he just like the look in the gallery that I had, he ear to ear, just walking out the tunnel. So, I mean, that's huge. Absolutely huge to be able to, and I know he's going to visit Notre Dame next week, but to be able to get him, I mean, you need to be able to get him at least being within striking distance with him, along with being in striking distance with Bryce Underwood. You got to finish and close with Elijah Dotson. Okay, these are dominoes. This is like I think I said this on Friday. This is like recruiting Jim Harbaugh to leave the 49ers to come to Michigan. You need certain dominoes to fall. Now, Meadows probably doesn't come to Michigan without Bryce, but if you get it to the point where he's like, you know what, if Bryce goes, I'll go, and you can have that conversation, and you got Elijah Dotson in his ear while at Belleville, suddenly you're working some angles that you weren't working before. So that's huge. Getting Elijah Haven, the 2027 5-star number 1 quarterback in the country, on campus was huge. There's also like a bunch of guys. Cooper Terwilliger, I love it. I love the name. Was a 4-star tight end out of, I think, South Dakota or something like that. Brock Harris, a 4-star tight end. I mean, they had a really nice recruiting weekend. Obviously Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng. I haven't talked to him outside of just exchanging a couple texts last night, but it sounds again like this is like every time he leaves Michigan, it feels like it's the team to beat. And considering he decides in a month from today, that's huge. You just maybe want to get him back one more time. But the fact that he's been on 2 unofficial visits during the season shows you how much he really is considering Michigan. It does feel like it's Michigan Notre Dame, and I do feel like Michigan's really pulling him in a lot of ways. So, and he clearly sees that they need linebacker help, so that's huge. And even just seeing some of the commits, Jalen Pyle coming back after he just committed, that was big just to see how excited he was to be around. And I didn't see Brady Hart myself, but him being there with his recruiting hat on is also massive. So I think it was a really big success. Now you just need to close on Grayson Littleton, who just decommitted from Clemson. Michigan's got the advantage there. It seems like he's still got another visit to take this next week, I think, to Texas. And then, I mean, they're closing really strong right now. Like, this class is number 10 according to On3. I could see this class being top 3 if they close with all the guys that they could close with, which is absolutely incredible. So, and there could be more fireworks to come, but I will give you more details as I find them out. Anyway, that's going to do it for us today. We'll talk a little Michigan basketball tomorrow as well as more football. So stay tuned to that. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you again soon. Peace.